And we are live. So, welcome to episode 265 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we have Michael James visiting once again from the Divine Will Era YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us, man.
Great to be here. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you back. And we've got John K. Alvarez, just a Jersey River rat. So, he's just one of the common folks. So It's always good to see him here on the channel. Good to see you again, man.
How are you, good sir?
Yeah, man. Well enough. So we got out of the stream last week, and I said, what's going on next week? I said, I don't know. We had just finished the Rum Diary, and you guys left, and I immediately started thinking, well, I was still sitting in the chair that I'm in now, and I'm like, well, what are we going to do for next week? And I'm like, well, Lent is coming up. I'm like, how about that? Maybe I can find a Lent movie. And so I went to the most anti-Catholic system that there is out there, which is Google, and I typed in Lenten movies, and this was one of the first things that popped up. And I love this movie, and I hadn't seen it in a really long time, and I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with Lent? But I'm like, you know what, I'll go with it. And here we are. I'm talking about Lasse Hamilton's Chocolat. So if you guys are ready to go, shall we get it going?
Get it up.
Boogie woogie. So, all right. What do we have here? Have like a sort of checklist of choices. I mean, do we have a harmless bit of fun, little Hollywood piece of celluloid? Do we have a film that might touch upon something a little bit deeper? Maybe the difference between having a healthy sense of discipline as opposed to just like suffering in silence, like this joyless sort of rigidity. Do we have something that's, a little, what's the word, secular, maybe poking fun at the church a little bit. These church people, they're a bunch of stiffs, that kind of stuff. Is, Benocia's character, Vian, is she the bad guy? Maybe you have a hot take sort of perspective. She's the bad guy. She's, a bad influence coming into this town, stirring things up and, blah, blah, blah. Let's start with Michael James. What do you think? I mean, quick, maybe, 60-second blurb. What do you think of the film? Where are we at here with this?
It's a really good film because it has so much substance to it. And that's really what I think a lot of movies lack. The villains are redeemed. It touches on some very big themes of repression, of being marginalized, of being shunned. There's a lot going on here, and there's layers to the characters that are very good. Some things don't work for it. I think the love story doesn't work at all. I think Johnny Depp you could replace with anybody, and it falls flat. There's not much to it. But I think a lot of the dynamics between this social war that's going on, and even with and what's Vianney, even Vianney's development as a character, as well as the Comte's development. You have a lot going on.
All right. John, what do you got here? What do you think?
There's a lot of words that you can use to describe certain movies. I've used a lot of them, like epic and sweet and overwhelming. One of the few times that gets used is this word called endearing. You were asking what it was. To me, Michael, this is an endearing fable. At best, it brings you in with a very good story and a good group of characters. And I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Michael, about on the love story between the river rat and the chocolate and the chocolate lady, because she is a free spirit in a sense of like she goes where the wind blows or the wind takes her, as it were. And so is Depp, but he's actually more grounded, even though he sails in and out of town. I think he's a perfect counterbalance to her character, where she tries to help entice people and bring them in and to enjoy her gifts and traits. As he says in the movie, the Johnny Depp character goes, there's people who make friends with us make enemies of others, so to speak, because they get blamed for things. This movie, to me, is exactly what it is. I would not be surprised if I reread the book and it starts off with Once Upon a Time, because it has that feel to it. There's one character, without giving away too much of the movie, who towards the end of the movie turns around and says, maybe we shouldn't be celebrating what we deny and celebrate what we accept, what we do, what we allow, so to speak.
Let me just say, it's been 25 years. So if you haven't seen it by now, I mean, this isn't a film that's streaming anywhere.
That's true.
This didn't just drop last week. So there's 25 years of Chocolat, the film.
Yeah.
Feel free to talk about, you're talking about the priest.
It was a priest in his sermon where he said, I'm not sure what the sermon's supposed to be about. But the way he recognized what he saw and said, maybe it shouldn't be what we deny, but what we include, what we create.
All right.
And I've always found that a sweet, wrap up to the story, even. I really did.
All right, hold on a second. We got a quick comment here. We got Eric from Hey Internet Eric here, and he says, good evening, gentlemen and John. Hope you're all well. So what's happening, man? Thanks for stopping in. This is a movie based on a series, well, not on a series of books, but there are a series of books about this character written by an author named Joanne Harris, which is the first is Chocolat. And then I believe as the Vienne character expands throughout the different books, she actually moves on from the town, going to other places, if I'm not mistaken. And then in the in the fourth book, she returns to the French town, I think, to finally settle down. And the Comte de Renault, the mayor, has become a priest in the fourth book and greets her as a friend. I actually have ordered all of the books. I found used copies for like $1, so they're on their way. I'm actually looking forward to reading them. I think that there's a lot here. I think you're both right. There's a lot of story. There's tradition, which has its place. There's acceptance. And sometimes to a tragic end, like you see with Carrie Ann Moss's character, who misses the opportunity to reconcile with her mother before her mother passes. It's able to happen between the grandson and Judi Dench. but between Carrie Ann Moss and Judi Dench, they lose the chance. There's courage in characters like Lena Olin, who's the battered woman who sort of comes into her own. But I mean, it's a really an ensemble cast. You've got so many good people in this. Well, hold on. This strange character sort of rolls in with her daughter and is trying to, just by her own example, show that it's okay not to deny yourself the good things in life. You don't have to be a complete libertine. We're not introducing, crack cocaine into your neighborhood. It's just a simple chocolaterie. It's a sweet shop. Which runs greatly afoul of the way things happen in that town. So if somebody wants to go from there.
I think I would like to, there's so many different themes we can jump to and zero in on. But if we just keep on with the bigger picture, and what I think is that the underpinnings of this story, right, comes across at first as something kind of trite and something kind of shallow. And then they add on to it in very interesting ways. So I think in fundamentally, we have on the surface what appears to be a typical story about 50s repression, marginalization, shunning, and this hits everybody. Everyone knows what it's like to be oppressed, to come across a whole town, a social battle, being outnumbered. And then at the end, everyone needs to lighten up and let their hair down and embrace indulgent chocolate and sex and stop all this repression. Now, that in itself is a story that's been told before, many times, especially in movies in the 60s and 70s. But what makes this very, very interesting is you see the journey of the chocolate lady. You see how she realizes she's hurting her daughter. This daughter creates a imaginary friend that goes away at the end. She grows to a place where she's comfortable with settling down and realizing that these people aren't villains and forgiving these people. And the villains come and they're humanized and redeemed. And I think these aspects, along with a lot of other things, is really what makes this movie that starts off with something that's been said 1,000 times, but they do it in a unique way. And they add all these very interesting, substantial events in these characters' lives.
I think one of the things you also see, hold on, let me just get this in real quick, John. I think one of the things you also see is that the villains aren't flat characters. They have a lot of depth. If you look at like Alfred Molina's character, Alfred Molina is just fantastic in this as the Comte de Renault, because he's in mourning because his wife has left him. And I remember when I first saw this movie, I thought, well, he is this way because his wife left him. And then watching it this time, I'm thinking, well, maybe she left him because he just is this way, and she wanted more out of life than, whatever it was that he saw fit to provide. But the fact that I hope my internet's not lagging.
No, you're good.
He's so unhappy. It's so obvious how unhappy he is. Like there's that one scene in the beginning of the movie where he's got the food out in front of him, and it's just like a croissant with like some butter and some jam, and he refuses to eat the croissant. He puts like a picture in front of the food, and he's like smelling the strawberry jam, and it's all gone too far. They've all taken it too far. And that's how everybody in this town is living. It's just suffering in silence.
Right.
You've got the other guy who he's in love with that old woman for like 40 years, but he's afraid to ask her out because it might be a sin because she's a widow. She was married. He's not sure where the line is. You got the new priest. Who's just a kid, and Alfred Molina just bullies him all the time into delivering the homily the way that he likes it. And the guy is he's a kid. He looks like he's 12. Yeah, just the whole. I love that they expanded the whole town. You got the
Yeah.
one couple that they've lost the like the romantic spark. It's just all these different things that are not happening in this town that just have sort of the whole place is sort of fallen asleep.
Well, that's what makes the story so wonderful, is the fact that it does start off simply. And like, we've seen these characters before, but the more and more you go into it, not all the villains are villainous. I mean, as evil as or as mean as the antagonist Alfred Molina was playing, you couldn't hate him because you saw his pain.
They were real
You know,
people. Yeah.
and
They all were
yeah,
real
and
people.
as sweet and kind as Binoche's character was with the chocolate, you saw the fact that she's saying, when she realizes my daughter hates the moving, and she has to read, and she sees that she's not perfect. When I think it's a wonderful way to make the audience realize that, or recognize themselves as the layers start getting deeper and deeper. Judi Dench's character, I think, is absolutely fantastic in it, because in the beginning, she comes in walking with a cane and in almost like an old crone, and she's more of a person who's a philosopher in this whole damn show. And every time she's saying something, I'm nodding my head going, yep, I agree. Yep, I agree. It's the levels that they're at, and you just keep going, and it's not like an overly dramatic situation. Even the father, the husband who was abusive, and the one scene where he comes in and tries to be, he's not smashing windows and everything else. He's being a drunk, and he's slipping and falling and not doing well. All right, when he goes to kill or choke the character, when he gets hit, and what's he do? And she makes a joke, says, "I can't use, don't tell me I can't use a frying pan." It just shows the pain that a lot of these people are in. And yeah, we've seen it a lot, but this was a little different. It doesn't smack you over the head. It kind of takes you by the hand and says, "Here we go. Let's all take a look at this."
And I
You'll
think it's
find your
precise. And I think it's precisely because the characters are so well fleshed out. They're people.
yeah.
They're people who are broken. They're people in confrontation. There's people with different values, and they all are
Mhm.
confronting each other. And I want to turn to what I think is a very fair and good demonstration of the negative aspects of religious culture on marriage during that time. And I think that was
Mhm.
pretty interesting. And I think it's pretty much, from what I hear, really on the ball with that. And when there was so much emphasis on marriage and always staying together, and look at the abusive husband, right? So,
Mhm.
these communities in a cheer, yeah, hit her again. No, they would take him and they would say, that was horrible. Let's try to reform you and let's try to save this marriage.
Mhm.
That's what they did back then. And it was their way of saying, well, this is what we believe in marriage and we're going to make this work. But that opened up the door for a lot of abuse, a lot of bad marriages, a lot of
Mhm.
places where women couldn't go. And I think it really
Mhm.
says that really, really well. And same with the count, that he would not move on because a marriage is a marriage forever. So the wife left him. It was shameful. He couldn't move on. He was sexually repressed. He could not get annulments back
Mhm.
then. He could not be remarried. So this sort of old-fashioned teaching on marriage really caused harm to families and communities, which is why Vatican
Mhm.
II reformed a lot of it, and Protestants in the same Christianity did it. But this was a lot of and I thought it was fair. It was realistic. It wasn't
Mhm.
cartoony. These weren't evil
Mhm.
communities. That's just the way they were. They thought they were doing what was right, and unfortunately, there was a lot of abuse that took place.
And this was
It,
also real quick, Michael, and I'll get off it in a second. Giving credit to the actors that were playing the parts, there was a bunch of beautiful character actors given actual characters to play,
yeah.
type deal. I mean, everybody, even the children in the streets were. I sat there and I said, they reminded me of real kids, not staged kids, as it were. Um, I'm sorry, the one scene with the woman who's talking about her husband, being repressed, and she's in the bathroom scrubbing the floor, and he's eating the nuts, and all of a sudden, look, you could have done that over the top or whatever else, but it was just like I started the first time I saw that. Sadly, my father was in the hospital with a stroke at the time, and I was watching with my mother. It was a break that we had, and the two of us busted out laughing at the same moment, and it was kind of like, oh my god, because it was real,
It was real, yeah, and I appreciate it even more being middle-aged now. They weren't attractive people; they're middle-aged people, they're married people, and they
Mhm.
wanted the relationship to be
Right,
fixed, and
right.
they needed a little chocolate to do that,
You have
and
you have any
and they did
more of
it
those
well.
nuts?
Right,
You have any more of those
right,
nuts? How many do you
exactly.
have? How many do you
Yeah.
want? How many you got? I'm sorry.
It was humorous, but it wasn't crude, and it really
Yeah,
touched on a real part of being
but
middle aged and being married.
when people flirted with each other, I mean, with Juliette Binoche and Johnny Depp, the way they were talking with each other and everything else, it wasn't over the top flirting. Like for
No,
this
it
movie,
was
my mother, it was the first time she saw Johnny Depp. She had never seen a Johnny Depp movie before, or it just wasn't in her wheelhouse. When she said, "Who is this guy?" and I described him, they said, "He flirts like a man." And I went, "Okay." And she goes, "No, I've seen men who do movies where they flirt and it's over the top, or it's like he flirts like a man. He is attracted to her, in a very natural way. The way they played it, it really that's what to me what really sold this story too. They were part of
It's
the storytelling.
it's a very well written script.
Yeah.
Um, there's not a lot of flab on it. I thought it
Mhm.
had also a beautiful cinematography within this
Mhm.
sort of very narrow village. Where
Mhm.
everything is just sort of horizontal and one brick building after another. And it looked very old, and it kind of looked
Mhm.
perfect for the setting of this place where some sort of to use a word from the movie, like a rebirth was required. Um,
Right.
it's just it's a fantastic film. I thought even you can't have a character arc in a story without having a character fail.
Right.
Because otherwise there's no point. It's just success after, and so there's no expectation, and so there's no need for a suspension of disbelief. And so the fact that every character in here, in their attempt to grow a little bit outside of the short one with the lady eating the nuts and everything, which was great. I mean, don't misunderstand me, I'm not knocking it, but within the main characters, everybody is struggling. Carrie Ann
Mhm.
Moss is struggling. She doesn't reconcile with her daughter. Judi Dench struggles. She doesn't. I mean, she doesn't reconcile
Mhm.
with her mother. The mother-daughter. Those two don't patch it up. Alfred Molina, like Mike was saying, lives a
Mhm.
greatly repressed life, and he's just so unhappy he can't even eat a croissant. Like he's so repressed he can't even eat a croissant for Lent. I thought one of the great redemptive arcs that ends up in failure is Peter Stormare, who's always just a great character actor, and he plays Serge,
Yeah.
the drunk bartender, and
Yep.
the attempt to sort of to socialize him properly. And like Mike said, the mayor grabs him. "We're going to make an example out of you," and he throws him into that confession.
Yep.
He's like, "You've come in the spirit of contrition, right?" He's like, "Yes, contrition. Like, don't hit me or anything like that." And like half a second, it
Mhm.
looks like he's going to make it. Like he gets sober for a short period of time. He gets like a brush up on his RCIA, like his cap. What the different types of sin is. He
Right.
starts to clean up his appearance. He approaches his
Mhm.
wife. Until he hits that first disappointment and she says, "No, like I'm done with this. I accept your apology, but I can't go back to that life
Right.
anymore." And he can't hack that. I think he
Right.
somehow expected that, that there was a guaranteed outcome to this.
Right.
Um, I always loved Peter Stormare in whatever I see him in. He's usually
Yep.
relegated to, non-cinematic types of things, but every once in a while you get him in something like this, and he's always fantastic. I love Peter Stormare.
There was a movie he did at the same time, which was he was in Constantine playing Lucifer.
Yeah, of course.
And if you look at those two parts, they were drastic as night and day, and he was brilliant in both of them.
Yeah. I'd like to go back to Johnny Depp. Well, I will agree and maybe have something else, another perception of this movie that differs from John. So I think Johnny Depp, his character, is the most underdeveloped character. And I think it's so realistic, it's awkward. And I think it's because, I could be by design, because this movie's fundamentally about the Count and the Chocolate Lady. You even see how the scenes are going back and forth from them both coming to these awareness and their character. When the ashes fall and the daughter's crying, it's going to him in the church crying, and before he starts eating all the chocolate. It's really about those two. And Johnny Depp just is a dude. He's just any guy that she can bop, and he doesn't really have that personality. There's really no foundation. I even think him coming back in the end isn't. I think the weakness in the movie is there's no groundwork for him to even come back in again. He's really just a two-dimensional guy who's an outcast. They connect like that and they bop, and there's really nothing too much there with this entire love story at all. And I think that it might have been stronger if Johnny just left at the end, but it's almost like they forced him to come back and try to make this more of a love story than it was, when it's really not a love story. It's really about her journey from being a free spirit to a more mature, middle-aged woman who forgives, and about the town that goes through this metamorphosis. So I think it's kind of forced. I'm not sure that I think could be better with some reworking of this. And I like Johnny Depp, but there's nothing to it.
Oh no, don't get me wrong, Michael. I'm not here to argue it, but I'm to me,
argue, baby. Bring it out.
no, I mean, to me, he was a kindred spirit of her. She was very, not freewheeling, but she was more of a free spirit, and so was he. That's why he was the only one who could talk to her when he said, "Is she happy?" Anybody else could say that, and she was as she was, blowing it up. She's fine. Oh yeah, she makes friends. I think this is good for her. She can confess to him because he's similar to her. Yes, is he? I'll even say he's underdeveloped in this. I personally think they did bring him back at the end so you can find out what his favorite chocolate was.
I think that Johnny Depp serves a purpose.
Oh, yeah.
He serves a purpose. He serves a purpose.
I think that Johnny. No, I think he serves a purpose in the sense that he is sort of a target for. Like, there's a point in this movie where things really start to dip and get mean-spirited. When Alfred Molina starts going into the hairdresser, and starts, saying that these people are like, evil in so many words, that the gypsy people, the river people that have just come into town aren't doing anything. If they want some work, hey, fix my door. You got to pay me though. I'm not here to beg. I'm not here to, commit crime or anything like that. We're just staying for a little bit. We want some food. But it gets the politics of a small town and how close-minded people really can be. And it's also that sense that, almost anyone can kind of be the villain because they are the women get mean-spirited, even to the point where, you get to Judi Dench's funeral. And, I hope her last thoughts were of repentance. Like it gets kind of really dark. For a while, about the 2/3 of the way through the movie, when Julia Binoche kind of washes her hands and says, "Okay, I'm kind of done." So I mean, Depp's the sort of matinee idol, romantic interest, but he also and the people that arrive on the boat together, he also brings. I don't think anybody could have been him because I think Johnny Depp is a really good actor, and I think he. Really good job in this. It's just, it's not the most fleshed out character in the story. There's no development. There's no development for him except for him to come back. That's about it.
He's the supporting actor, in this.
Yeah.
But that, and to give credit where credit's due, because I did not know this until today when I saw a documentary. The director let him pick the music that he was playing.
Yeah.
And they said it's actually the first time he played live on film.
Yeah.
All the other times he was playing guitar for different things, it was pre-recorded stuff and they never used it. So, and I sat there, I was like, well, then hell, I'm impressed because I can't even, hum on film without screwing it up. If he was actually doing that on a whim, playing the Django Reinhardt and what have you, that impressed me. But yeah, I agree with you, Mike, because he wasn't. He was a lead actor who wasn't the lead. He actually played the character actor and played it well.
He's only in about a third of the movie.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, he's only in about
And
a third.
but there's a lot of them who are like that. What's his name? I cannot remember his name because I can never pronounce it. But the bartender,
Peter Stormare.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
He had very little. I don't want to say a little part, but he had a smaller role. But he fleshed it out as much as he could. I mean, this is what is an amazing thing of this movie was that even the little old ladies that were coming to the window when she first started taking the paper, they were playing their parts to as much as they could possibly pull off and as much as they could give. And I think that's what makes this movie endearing, to use that word again, because they were committed to it.
Yeah, he's not. Go ahead, Mike.
Just the one thing to disagree with you guys, and then I'll won't beat the dead horse. I just did not believe the connection between the two of them. To me, it came across as Johnny Depp would have took any girl to bed, and she happened to be the only one in the town that would talk to him. And she was ready to and she was lonely, she was broken, and she was ready to, go to bed with somebody, and they just connected. And I didn't believe any kind of connection occurred between them. And that's what all I got to say.
If they had the money, Judi Dench would have gotten naked with Johnny Depp. You watch.
If she wasn't around, he probably would have had sex with Judi Dench. If she wasn't around, Johnny Depp would have played his little guitar in the sack with Judi Dench.
And that would have done a Shakespeare sonnet.
I always remember the bloopers at the end of Grumpy Old Men, and the last one is Walter Matthau, and he's in a bathtub with the scrub brush and the rubber duck, and he goes, "If I'd known there was going to be a nude scene, I would have asked for another million."
What's the line that Judi Depp says to him? She goes, if I was a little younger, we would, I love that. But Judi Depp's the only one who can get away with saying that and making it believable.
Speaking of Judi Dench, that is such a common dynamic where the daughter or the children are so angry at their senior citizen parents for not taking care of themselves, that they hate them for not taking care of themselves. And it goes on and on and on. I've seen it so many times, the frustration, and it tears the family apart when you have, when they just kind of give up and say, that's it. I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm not going to take care of myself. It really starts a lot of friction in the family. I thought that was great.
And and to touch on a point in the movie, that little wheel that they spin on the table and they say, look into it. And people would tell them what they say, so she's able to pick whatever chocolate is. This is the brilliance of Judi Dench, was when she looked into it and she picked the chocolate. And Binoche gave her the piece of chocolate and she goes, "This reminds me," and then she giggles. And I'm going, there's more in that giggle than anything any scriptwriter could have written. I mean, she goes, "This reminds me of," and that chuckle, and I'm going, the performances in this were, I used to show this in an acting class because it gave the sense of there's no small actor, there's no small parts, only small actors. To show that and to flesh it out. And so many of actresses came to me to try to understand that whole bit where Judi Dench is doing that little monologue, talking about swimming with the guy in the lake and being naked and getting up to the bedroom and the mother waking up. They loved that monologue. And I'm going, that's called being an actress, guys. She knew where to take it so it would connect with you. And she was like 30, 35 years older than they were when they were in the class.
She's still alive. I think she's still alive, isn't she, Judi Dench? She's still alive.
But this was back in 2000. She was
she must be very old 60. Now.
She's about 85.
Wow.
Because I know.
Because she's old. 25 years ago, she's old.
She was about 60 something, 62, I believe.
Hold on.
Yeah, look it up so I know.
And I do. I love. And she's one of the few people I know who can read the phone book, and I would actually sit and watch.
She is 90. She is now 90. God bless her.
She's 90. Mm-hmm. So back then she was 65. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. You see these things, and I think sometimes all it takes to move forward is just to speak the truth, and to speak the problem into, insert the truth into the conversation. And one of the great characters in here, and she's another person who does great character acting, was Lena Olin, who plays the battered woman. And initially, when she's still in that sort of very traumatized state, she's like, this place is fine if you pretend, that this is happening or this isn't happening. So many, things, you just kind of have to keep keep to yourself and just sort of pretend that everything is fine. And I noticed that, that sort of came to bear towards the end of the film when Carrie-Anne Moss has that conversation with Alfred Molina, and she just says, she doesn't even look at him. She's sort of looking down, or he won't look at her. And she just says, no one would think less of you if you finally admitted that your wife is not coming back. She's like, I don't think anyone would think less of you for that. And so, these simple truths, that, people just need to speak in order. It's not as complicated as people have made it out to be, but, you can find yourself in a miniaturized kind of, hell, a miserable situation just by not speaking the truth.
And she said it in such a gentle way, way. No confrontation, no yelling at him, just very gentle, and walked out because she knew it was painful for him to hear.
Well, it's they preach honesty, but it's hard for them to be honest in this, so to speak. And that's what I really loved about this.
Well, it's a Catholicism with a kind of there's not a great deal of grace. That maybe you guys will disagree with me as Catholics. I didn't see a lot of that. It's just kind of this hard-nosed kind of, you will do this kind of thing. And, it's kind of miserable. And
well,
I think one of the reasons that, hold on, I think one of the things that really sets people off about Juliette Binoche is that her character is happy.
Right.
And I think that sort of, it really kind of irritates Alfred Molina. Of all people, who is the most unhappy character, I think, in this film.
Right. I agree. I think there's a lot of I from my own growing up in a Catholic family. I remember my mother bought me a hat for my one birthday that says "Tis Himself" on it, and the reason why she said. She bought it. That's when she politely told me that I reminded her of a lot of her uncles and aunts that were more artistic than her own parents were. And I said, well, what do you mean? She turned around and said, you don't mind being happy. And I went, well, yeah, well, why not? She goes, there's a lot of people in my family that said, oh, no, there's something wrong with you if you're too happy. Type deal, but that was the way they were raised. Also, a little strict when it came to religion, but that was more. It wasn't just that. Like they grew up during the Great Depression. They grew up during with not having things. She goes, you're one of the few people I know who don't have everything, and yet you're happy with what you got. And I went, oh, okay. I think Juliette Binoche is that way. And there's a lot of people, if they show happiness, they're told, oh, no, you're not being good. And I'm like, I never could understand that. But that's me personally.
Yeah. And I agree. I think, I think it's very well known and emphasized, and it's been emphasized for decades, that when religion had influence in pockets of the culture, it led to some very negative I think repressive is the perfect word. Repressiveness and oddness, and a lot of people hurt, abuse. And then now they don't have influence anymore. And also, and the answer to that was not indulgence. The answer to that was not eat whatever you want, have sex with anyone you want. And I think, we don't need too much help today to be indulgent and to overeat, over have sex, overdo things that are just destroying lives left and right, drugs and what have you. So and that's why I thought where the movie did a good job. It wasn't that shallow as repressive, bad, indulgence, good, because you saw the chocolate lady, how she grew when she realized that her lifestyle, it was subtle. It was much more subtle. Her lifestyle was hurting her daughter. Her daughter wanted to be somewhere. She was making up things. She kept running away. Even I can read into it. But even on that boat, when she grabs her daughter, this sort of guilt that I wasn't there. I took you to this place, this party, and we don't have a safe home. You're in this situation. That sort of guilt when she was crying. Johnny Depp was just there, I think, for her to cry that to him, that this is hurting my daughter. Remember that scene? This is hurting my daughter. And she grew from that, which really made it a much more balanced movie, that there's negativities to the family being an extreme free spirit with no roots, and there's repressiveness with this small town religious culture as well.
That's why I thoroughly enjoyed the ending of the movie when she did with the ashes and the narration and everything else. And
me too. End it there. We don't need Johnny Depp to come back with his stupid face.
When she tossed it, I had to find out what his favorite chocolate was, but when he tossed the ashes to the wings, he said, "That's a problem for someone else to solve." I went,
"Yeah, it's growing up, right? She's got a kid. She's middle aged. A lot of us were free spirits when we were younger, but you reached this is no way to live, right? It's no way to live with kids now, and there has to be some kind of balance moving forward.
That's why I don't have any children that I know of. I hit the lottery; they'll all come out of the woodwork.
You get to this point in the film towards the end where we get to Easter Sunday, because Lent is a 6-week period. So this takes place over the course of about 6 weeks. A lot of things change really fast. A lot of realizations, kind of shock treatment, happens to like all these different people in the town, which leads into, Alfred Molina's eventual meltdown, where he finally just breaks down and he just starts weeping because he's just so unhappy, And we get to that homily on Easter Sunday from the priest who is just sort of improvising. And, you realize he talks about not focusing so much on the divinity, but on the humanity, the human side, the perhaps the more probably, I would say so. Yeah. The more relatable side of things, which is, I think, the fundamental shift in, Molina's character. And from there, everybody in the town sort of follows, with the exception of the few people who try to help Juliette Binoche when she finally, after the fire, she's like, I got to get out of here. This place isn't safe. They just tried to kill us. But, that lack of focus that had been sort of looked upon maybe derisively, or however you might pronounce it. We're not looking at the humanity. We're focusing on the divinity, and it made everybody so unhappy, and afraid to speak out about, hey, this isn't working out for me. Like we're all kind of miserable here. Instead of that, everybody just kind of went along. And it sparks a little bit of life into the town at the end. People aren't having orgies in the town center and, like worshiping, black mass or anything like that.
Which I had a problem with.
Yeah, they're just having some chocolate cake. That's all it was. That was the big release. We're going to have some chocolate, and the kids are going to run and play in the town, and it's going to be a nice spring day, and we're going to have some sweets, to celebrate. We're all going to go to mass. We're still going to go to mass, except for these people over here, and we're going to be okay with that. We're going to be okay with the fact that there are 2 people in the town that don't celebrate mass. We don't have to burn them at the stake. We don't have to, like when Molina's character talks about how his ancestor drove out all the Huguenots. You're like, oh, this guy's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's like no acceptance from any, sort of contrary points of view. And everybody has learned something. Everybody has advanced, except for Johnny Depp. Everybody has advanced.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I want you to come back.
Exactly. Hey, he did advance.
Come out of here. Close my eyes.
Go ahead, John.
No, go ahead.
In fact, just to add to this dichotomy between repression and indulgence that you were talking about, and how it took a balance taken, just to, to think about, in Catholic culture during Lent is a time for self-denial. And that could easily be made fun of or characterized as repressive or old-fashioned.
Mm-hmm.
But, just to talk about what self-denial is really a part of all of our lives. No one ever says, oh, I played video games, I got drunk, and I masturbated 7 times, and I feel great about myself today. No one's ever said that.
What are you talking about?
There's a part of self-denial in all of our lives. So we can be the people who we want to be and achieve our goals and develop virtue and what have you. And that extreme, and I think the movie does an okay job at making that distinction between a negative, repressive, intolerant culture. Well, it doesn't really ever say anything about the goodness of self-denial, but it could be implied that it's there.
Hold on, John. Let me just say this one thing. We talk about this during Lent. Although it is a time of self-denial, it's supposed to be joyful.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, especially you look at, like I see it online a lot. There's a lot of joyless stuff going on there pertaining to religion or, maybe the way people are viewing the world. You think this is like the most joyless existence ever. And it's just not. It's not. And like people confuse what's going on their Twitter feed, which is a virtual reality, with actual life. It's not the same thing. Right. It's not the same thing. Everybody has hardships. Everybody has difficulties, family problems, health concerns. Everybody's a person away from some sort of tragedy or hardship. But it's not supposed to be, this fixation on, unhappiness and, denial. And, we stopped flagellating ourselves a long time ago. Like, don't do that. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I'm not, so I think you're familiar with this, it's sort of a subculture. Wouldn't you agree? It's just kind of a subculture. It's not, you want to call it too prevalent in the culture, more like a subculture of religiosity, Mike?
I hope so. I hope so. I can't, I can only speak for the people that I interact with, yourself and John and, my friend Bill and, some other people from my parish. They seem pretty happy. You don't, spend a time, micro analyzing everybody's, existence, but you would think so. But I mean, if you look at it online, you'd think that we were in the dark ages.
That internet stuff, as I think of the internet, sometimes you have these really subcultures that we would just ignore altogether, but now we see them and we're like, wow, this is crazy stuff.
And they've all united.
Yeah. Well, they've all
united.
I jokingly turned around and said, because and Mike, my brother Paul.
Sure.
him and I, when we were the ninth and 10th children in a family. And I used to turn around and say, we were raised Roman Catholic, but my parents believed in reincarnation, which always amazed me, because whenever I would say that in Catholic school, get in the corner, say 10 Hail Marys. But when I was growing up, especially in high school, before my car accident that I was in when I was a teenager, I was going to St. Joe's Prep and was being taught by the Jesuits, who at the time truly believed in don't run away from your intellect. Yes, there was still religious, teachings brought into it, but they weren't saying you had to deny, anything from science. When I transferred to another school in Philadelphia, it was called Archbishop Bryan. They were done by the Franciscan monks. And there was a teacher I was seeing as a counselor after my accident, because I couldn't afford a shrink. And he turned around and said, "You're going there?" And they said, "They're going to hate you for your intellect." And because they were very much, you had to sacrifice, you had to do this, you had to be in service. And someone asked me, goes, "How did you balance it out?" I turned around and said, when I approached Lent, yes, I would give up something. As I always say, it's a great way to start my diet for bathing suit season. But instead of just giving up something, I would also add something. Like reach out to somebody who I might not know anything about. For a couple of years when I wrote for a newspaper, it was during the Lenten season when a guy walked up to me and said, "Do you want to hear about the homeless in South Jersey?" And I said, "You know what? Yeah, let's get into this." And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to add something. I keep hearing about this. Let's find out what it is." And it was funny because it opened the door to me, type deal. So of something that I didn't know it was in the area because of the way everybody kept saying, and you want to talk about repression? No, there's no homeless. There's no such thing here in South Jersey.
Well, no, that's not what I was saying. I was just saying
I went off a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, that wasn't. I mean, the point that I was originally making is that if you look online with some of these communities, it's doom and gloom, and so it's easy. It can be easy, I think, for a person in this Holy Week coming up is only my third year in the church, but I'm not 5 years old either. But it can be easy to think that, oh my God, maybe I've got it all wrong, but I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense. But you hear it enough times, it's easy to become convinced, that maybe these people over here have it. But
let me jump in. If I could jump in, because this is kind of where I live. Just a little background. I'm a Roman Catholic podcaster, and it's a pretty big channel. And I don't even call them traditionalists, but there's a lot of fanatics. There's a lot, unfortunately, a lot of broken and fanatical people are attracted to all kinds of religion, not just Roman Catholicism. And I get threats, I get all kinds of horrible, nasty emails, and but I would like to think, and it's usually coming from the same place. It's coming from the same place. They want more of a rigid, old-fashioned, repressive, and they see my speech as a threat to their idea of what the church should be. But I would like to think that this is a real noisy minority, that in 2025, we've really come further than that. But this noisy minority gets a lot of attention on the internet. And because they're so fanaticized that they just are, they're just constant, and they're constant. And they stalk people, and they do campaigns and what have you. And I'm sorry to hear that they're doing that much damage, but I still would like to think it's a minority, and really that Christianity across the globe has come a long way from the 1950s repression that we learned from.
Do you think it comes from a place of pain?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy because happy people don't act that way.
No, I mean, because
they're too busy enjoying life.
I was introduced one time by a friend of mine who said, "This is my friend John. He's a genuine Catholic." And I went, "All right, what do you mean by that?" And he goes, "You don't talk the talk, you walk it. I see your background in it by reaching out to people and what have you." And someone turned around, because there's a lot of people, especially down in this area. I remember one time some person turned around to me and goes, "Are you Christian?" And I said, "Well, I'm Catholic." And he goes, "No, are you Christian?" And I said, "Well, no, I was raised Roman Catholic." And all of a sudden, people who were talking to me and were friends of mine suddenly stopped talking to me, because like I
That's
wasn't.
interesting.
Yeah, that was like I wasn't
That's
part
interesting.
of.
I was gonna mention that too. And this ties into the movie, Mike. And it's kind of interesting that 25 years ago the church was in a different place, and
Mhm.
Roman Catholicism did have a sort of conservative, of really, really kind of conservative, anti-world kind of connotation to it, and that
Right.
really has changed. And you really see more, and the Protestants have really split too.
Mhm.
You have
Yeah.
mainline denominations who are really, really went
Mhm.
progressive. Then you have evangelicals who kind of went more and more to the right. So what you'll find really is the term evangelical being thrown
Mhm.
around by progressive people who don't like religion.
I have
I think
a
that's what you came in contact with. Some conservative evangelicals don't even consider Catholics as serving God. Yeah.
I
Yeah, of
have
course.
my landlord was a woman I was actually dating for the longest time and living together. She's introduced me to a Lutheran church because she's Lutheran, and the pastor looks at me and will call me every now and then. Said something on. He goes, "I consider you part of my flock," and I went, "Really?" And he goes, "Well," and he goes, "Well, yeah, because I just consider you. Come on in. Whenever I see you come on in and everything else." But she was talking about a guy who was asking her out on a date. And when she found out that she wasn't originally raised Lutheran, he said, "Well, I can't be with you." And literally walked away. I'm like, "Are you kidding?"
I believe.
And because it was, you know, if you have to start off as a Lutheran to be true. So you hear that sort of opposite way about it. And it was funny because the pastor who teaches, we work together on a project, and he turns around and goes, "I can see you're part of my flock, John. Come on into church." And he goes, "Even if you don't want to pray, come on in anyway. We got game night." You know,
But that's
type
the
Mike,
way
did
deal.
you
church is
want to say something?
supposed to be. Yeah, I'm going to say this, and then we're going to start to close it out.
Sorry, guy.
No, sorry. I just want to say that I think we should be careful about how much we despise the world. Let's,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah, and I
I'll
would
turn
like to
around.
just add in. I would just like to add that there's a difference between the Church of Jesus Christ and church people. The
Right.
people in
Yeah.
the pews, a lot of them are broken and they're not the best ambassadors. And there's a lot of people who might not even understand what Christianity is. And it's very easy to try to judge the entire Christian movement by individuals in the pew when there's just so many broken people out there, and it attracts all kinds of people
I've
who are
told
All right.
people.
healing, who are healing.
All right.
I've told people for a couple of years. Sorry, Mike, real fast. Because
John,
you said
hurry up.
judge.
No, I said
I
we're
told
closing
people.
that.
No, I told people real fast that when I turn around and said, "Until someone gives me a Roman gavel, I don't judge." I'm done. That's it.
Are you sure?
Um,
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, no. Sorry.
Hold on, John. I'll be with you in
I'm kidding. I'm
just
kidding.
a second. No, it's okay. All right. So John's having technical difficulties and won't be joining us for the rest of his life. Oh, there you are. Oh, okay. All right. So let's get to the part in the stream where we rate the film. This channel has a rating system that goes from 0 to 5 up by halves. So 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 5. So 0, for example, would be I'd rather eat slugs than watch this movie again, all the way to 5, which is this is the journey, this is the destination, this is the reason I watch films in the first place. John K. Alvarez, what would you give Lasse Hallstrom's Chocolat?
I would give it a very solid 4. I don't think it is perfect cinema. As much as I was, teasing Michael about the Johnny Depp character and everything else. Yes, I felt like some of the characters weren't fleshed out enough for me. But I think as a story-wise, it was fantastic. I love the music in this movie, which we didn't get to touch on a bit. I thought they used the music very well in it. And it's one of the few movies that when I do see it on, if I don't get a chance to sit down and watch it, in my head I go, I got to watch this again type deal. It's an endearing movie.
Okay, a solid 4. Michael James, what do you got for us?
I think it was charming. I think it was done well. Good performances. The story was okay. The character work was really good, and I will give it a 4 as well. It just doesn't really emotionally resonate with me. Some missed opportunities with some romance, but a very, very strong film.
Okay. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to go with a 4.5. Okay. It's not perfect, but it moves in that area just where you're starting to break the threshold into cinema. You've got an ensemble cast. You've got a great set in this European town. That realistically, I think, with a bit of comedy, because otherwise it would be very droll. It looks at the possibilities of life. If you're willing to be honest, just have that bit of honesty about what you want from life. If you're not getting what you want from life, then you need to speak up. That's really all it takes. Now, there's no guarantee that you're going to get 100% of what you want, but there's pretty much a guarantee that you're not going to get anything if you just sit there with your mouth shut, and you're going to get that look on your face that everybody has at the start of the film. It relates that message in a very entertaining way. I think this is maybe Alfred Molina's best role, which was funny because I saw in the documentary that he was given this role after that 5-minute scene he had in Boogie Nights, which is about as much of a contrast as you can imagine. But yeah, I'm going to stick with a 4.5. I love it. I own a copy. So, it's not something I watch every 6 months or something like that. But when I'm in the mood, yeah, not a problem. All right. Mr. Mike. What do you got for us? What's coming up with the Divine Will Era YouTube channel?
Oh, it's a very, very exciting channel. If you're in the religious mood, come on in, check it out. We have a theologian from the Vatican who used to be a championship wrestler. We just released his wrestling championship video back in 1988. It's fascinating. Check it out. And we do a lot of fun things. Even though we're a religious channel at Divine Will Era YouTube channel.
Mike, what have you got going on? Hold on, Mike. What have you got going on for Lent? I mean, aside from Father
on the Holy Thursday. That's a good question. Thank you. On the Holy Thursday, we go 24 hours live, and we have lots of people, and we pray for 24 hours around the clock. And we have a lot of people who come in, and they come in and out, and we pray this beautiful prayer where you're with Jesus through these 24 hours. It's a really, a lot of people find it very, very meaningful. It starts Holy Thursday at 5, and it goes all the way to Good Friday at 5.
I'm gonna have to spend some more time on your channel, man. I'm in there every once in a while.
I was going to invite you on actually after my next podcast. I was going to talk to you after the show.
Yeah, let me know.
I was going to ask though, how can you find it on YouTube?
Just do Divine Will Era.
I would like to watch and
just search Divine Will Era and you'll find it.
It's right there,
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, John, what do you got for us? Anything coming up?
I have 2 things coming up in about a month. One of them is called Derby Day, which will be done at Studio Space in Somers Point. It is a reading of a romantic comedy written by Bill Sterrett. I'm sorry. I have done this before. I play a character called King, which I think is hysterical. I play the most successful jockey in horse racing history, but never won the Kentucky Derby. Because when you look at a jockey, I'm it. But it's also going to be done live on they're zooming it and doing YouTube for it and everything else. It's going to be on Derby Day, the actual first Saturday in May, which I believe is the 3rd. Also, I just got this week, and I hope you guys can read that. If not, I'm going to hold it up as close as I can. K-May Stage, where I used to work for 18 years, the artistic director called me up and said they're doing a reading of a new play called The Redress at St. Bridget's. There we go. Let me see if I can get that in there. There you go. The Redress at St. Bridget's. The point about it is I'm actually playing an Irish bartender. And I got...
Oops. Sorry about that, John.
It's going to be done on May 15th. Michael being the critic who's heard me saying, get him off the air. But but the point about it is so I got 2 reader theater projects that are actually coming up from 2 different organizations that the more information I get, I would like to share on the channel because I truly try to, even in my weekend capacity, to support as much as I can for the live theater that's being done.
Okay.
Wonderful.
There you go.
All right. So, well, if you got some, if you have any flyers or something, send them to me, and the next time you're in the stream, I'll be able to put them up there, or send me some links, and I can put them in the description. Okay.
Thank you.
For this channel, I usually try to catch a film over the weekend and then put up a review. Last week, I got to see Locked In, which was I still didn't get the review up. Which is an interesting film with Bill Skarsgård and Anthony Hopkins, the great Anthony Hopkins, still out there doing it. And that was a great deal of fun. I got to get the review up on that. This week coming up is going to be more serious-minded as season 5 of The Chosen drops in theaters.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be I heard my understanding from everything I found, this is going to be a very emotional season. Season 4 ends where he rides into Jerusalem for Palm Sunday. So this is going to be essentially Holy Week, I guess, ending in his arrest. If you've watched the show, then I think it's one of the best series ever. It's unbelievable. I think they've tapped into something very special there. So that's going to be dropping in 3 episode blocks over the next 3 weeks.
Which channel is that on again, Michael?
No, this is dropping they're dropping that into the
theater.
Yeah, it's going to be in theaters.
Okay.
It's going to have like a 3 or 4 week run into theaters. And then sometime, I think around May, it will hit the streaming services. I think they've just gone exclusively with Prime. So It will be on Prime. But if you've watched it, there's no substitute for it. It's absolutely amazing. For next week, I don't know. I think this is the film that I'm just going to use as the Lenten film. I'm not going to do a whole series of films about Lent because I don't want to do something because you can pick some really depressing sorts of films for Lent if you want to. And it's funny because for about 5 minutes, I was part of Mike's channel doing movie reviews back in my RCIA stage. And I picked some movies that I look back now and I'm like I would have gone with this, with a little bit of experience and, under my belt, a couple of years. This is a much better film to discuss than some of the ones that I did, even though they were great films.
We liked it. We liked it. You were well appreciated.
I appreciate that. But next week, maybe as soon as we get kicked out of the stream here, I'll pick the next one for next week and let everybody know. So we'll coming up. I will get the review up for Locked In. I certainly will get a review up for season 3, the first 3 episodes of The Chosen for season 5. I'll get that up this weekend. So that's what's coming up for this channel. Okay.
I'm going to do an Alpha Molina special.
No, I'm not going to do that. Okay. All right. My thanks to Michael James from the Divine Will Era YouTube channel, and my thanks to John K. Alvarez, just the Jersey River Rat. Thanks to everybody for stopping in. We will see you all in the next video. All right, take care, everyone. God bless you. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. This is the American Werewolf. Thanks for stopping by. Like the video. Leave a comment.